We are now recording. And there's three things that we're going to be doing today. The first is we're going to be discussing, we'll provide a quick overview of our MERC CTE research and policy review. The information that we're providing in here for this particular presentation is just an overview of a lot more detail that we actually go into in the presentation. So just want to make sure that that's on your radar. If there's anything that we're talking about today that is of interest to you, just make sure that I would encourage you to actually go into the report and take a look at it. We always provide report highlights at the beginning and then 5 key takeaways and recommendations at the end. So you can jump straight to the information that's most relevant to your work. We always try to focus on really practical questions related to the topic. So just would encourage you to take a look at that. And then we're going to have our CTE leaders from MERC school divisions who are on the call share current priorities and challenges that they're facing, challenges and opportunities. And then we're going to conclude with a panel with our CTE leaders where we have some questions that we're going to be posing to them that are related to the research that we did, but also related to some of the things that they've said are current priorities and opportunities that they're hoping to pursue. And then we'll have time at the end for questions and answers with folks in the audience as well, because again, there's a lot of brain power here related to CTE, so we want to make sure that we leverage that. So here again is the slides and resources in the report. So the links we've already provided in the chat, but you're also welcome to scan these QR codes. These QR codes live on afterwards. So if you're viewing this on YouTube later on, you can please feel free to scan this and be able to access all the information that we're talking about here today. So let's get started. So this is the actual report. What we did when we were pulling together this report is we looked at trend data from National Center for Education Statistics and from the Virginia Department of Education. We also conducted a literature review that Meleah helped lead that it focused on research that's been published since 2021. So we really wanted to focus on research that's been published post-COVID and to be within the last 4 to 5 years. So just to be as current as possible for anything related to career and technical education. CTE has been around for a long time, but we wanted to make sure we focused on recent research, but we do talk about the history of CTE in the report. We do a policy analysis where we looked at federal, state, and division level policies, specifically in the MERC region and our 5 school divisions related to career and technical education. And then we provide 5 key takeaways and recommendations at the end. So whatever you're interested in related to this, we try to be as comprehensive as possible, but still make it succinct and relevant to your work. So first of all, what are the questions that we covered in this report? So first we asked about what are the purposes of CTE courses, just to provide some foundation. I think people that are on this call today probably are pretty familiar with this, so we're not going to share everything related to that here, but just to provide some background foundation related to that. We're going to share some trends in CTE participation and talk about how it varies by student and school demographics. A lot of that's covered in the report. We're going to provide an overview of that today. We'll talk about what are the impacts or benefits of career and technical education. What are evidence-based practices and innovative programs related to career and technical education? And then what policies guide the provision of CTE in our schools? And we'll get started first with this question of what are the purposes of CTE courses? And Meleah is going to share that information.
Thank you so much. Like David said, we know that everyone on this call probably has a lot of previous knowledge about the purposes of CTE courses. So I'm going to go through this somewhat quickly just to make sure that we have some base level information. So according to the Association for Career and Technical Education, CTE is available to students at secondary schools, technical centers, and post-secondary institutions. And it exposes students to career-focused curricula that helps prepare them for the workforce across different industries. And so that there's an emphasis on high-quality CTE that provides students with technical and job-specific skills, to develop and prepare informed citizenry. And then they are typically offered at the high school level, although we certainly know that there are some offerings in the post-secondary as well as in K through 8. And some of the barriers to CTE is lack of funding or professional development for supporting students with unique needs and meeting the personalized needs of students. Also, lack of time in student schedule between all of the requirements as far as course requirements. And then CTE being perceived as an at odds with college track, which you will hear throughout this conversation of there being the barrier that it's not necessarily, some may think it's not aligned with a college track, where we know it's valuable for students regardless of their post-secondary plans.
And so, what are some of the trends that we saw in CTE participation? So, this is based off of the data that we pulled together from NCES and VDOE. So, first of all, this is national data. So, what are the percentage of students that are earning at least one Carnegie credit? So, it's a 3-hour course in career and technical education. And this is how it cuts across different urbanicities. So, from urban, suburban, town, and rural settings. And what's really interesting about the MERC region is we have all of these represented in our region. The headline takeaway of this, I think, is that the vast majority of students are earning at least one CTE like course credit. So they're participating in at least one CTE course, typically while they're in high school, but it's more common in town and rural settings. And then specifically in Virginia, there's 670,000 students that participated in CTE for the year that we did this report. So I think that was 2024, and they participated in 17 different career clusters of courses, and there were over 400 course offerings that were available to students across the state. So we have a very robust CTE program in Virginia. In terms of 5-year growth in CTE clusters in Virginia, so these are, CTE is organized in clusters, and I'm sure our school division leaders are going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like in their divisions. But in terms of the CTE clusters that showed the most growth over the last 5 years, we looked at information technology, hospitality and tourism, and transportation, distribution, and logistics. And hospitality and tourism, and then transportation, distribution, and logistics specifically had over a 500% increase in student enrollment over the last 5 years. So that's just really interesting to kind of think about, like, as CTE courses are supposed to align with workforce needs, how does that kind of align with what we know about these different industries? In terms of actual percentage of students passing CTE exams and earning CTE credentials, so on the left here, you see what this looks like in Virginia and then the MERC region. And we're looking again at about a 5 or 6 year difference here. So pre-COVID and post-COVID. And we wanted to get the school year 18-19 before COVID actually had any kind of impact on student academics that year. And we could see that there's been a decline over that time for the percentage of students that are passing CTE exams or earning CTE credentials, at least one. And that decline for percentage of students passing CTE exams was more pronounced in the MERC region than it was at the state level. But we didn't show any decrease over that 5-year period for students earning a CTE credential, whereas the state had a 3% decrease over that time period. This is a really interesting kind of breakdown of in the MERC region, what are our certifications and assessments from the 2023-2024 school year, which was the most recently available data as of our reporting. And so it's industry certifications, workplace readiness, licensures, national like credentialing exams, the ASVAB, so a military test taken, then CTE completers. And then you can see the percentages down here in terms of the percentages of students in the MERC region relative to Virginia. And the MERC region at that year represented about 12.3% of Virginia high school students. So we've highlighted in red the areas where we're underperforming, and then highlighted in green some of the areas where we're overperforming. So you can see that in our region, we're overperforming in terms of workplace readiness and licensures, but there's opportunities in some of these other areas. But some of them are very close to what we would expect in terms of the percentage of students in our region compared to their proportionality at the state level. And then when we look at this compared to fall demographic or fall membership data from the Virginia Department of Education, that basically shows the percentage of students from different demographic groups and economic disadvantage, students with disabilities, multilingual learners, that sort of thing. We could see how this is related to the percentage of students that are passing CTE exams or earning at least one CTE credential. And so we could see contextually as the percentage of Black, Latino, economic disadvantage, and multilingual learner students and students with disabilities increase in the school, it's associated with a lower number of students that are passing CTE exams, and that as the percentage of white students in the school increase, that it's associated with higher numbers of students that are passing those CTE exams, and that's significant, statistically significant. And those relationships still existed when we're looking at students earning at least one credential, but those aren't significant relationships. So all this is to say, like, we have all different kinds of schools and school contexts in the MERC region, and there is some evidence to suggest that it's connected with CTE outcomes for those students.
So it's likely if you're on this call, you already know that participation in CTE is valuable to students. So we're going to discuss some of the impacts and benefits. Some you may already know and some may be new to you. So to begin with academic achievement, Higher quality CTE is associated with better engagement, attendance, and achievement for students. It is also associated with higher graduation rates as well as increased enrollment in our community colleges. And there's evidence that there are particular benefits for students with low SES backgrounds. So even though David had mentioned there were some gaps in performance on the CTE exams. With that being said, those who do participate experience benefits compared to their peers who do not. The tracking implications. So, tracking students, determining whether they are suitable or not suitable for CTE may be related to perceptions of high or low status fields, what opportunities those who are supporting students or advising them may think are available to them or best for them based on some type of identity of that student. And tracking, as you know, can limit student access to college and career opportunities. And students may perceive that they either have to choose between pursuing a path to college or pursuing CTE and not necessarily being aware of how CTE can be helpful in their college pathway. There are also social, emotional, and behavioral implications. So as we mentioned before, CTE is associated with improved classroom attendance, and then CTE students often report higher levels of confidence in achieving their career goals. And then the post-secondary benefits. Students with disabilities who participate in CTE have higher rates of college enrollment. So that's interesting when you consider it with the data that David previously shared, again, that students with disabilities often perform lower on their exams. However, their participation in CTE is correlated with higher rates of college enrollment. Additionally, CTE in high school is associated with higher enrollment in community college, which we mentioned as well in the previous slide. Career and workplace readiness. So increased participation in CTE is associated with a higher likelihood of a student finding employment directly out of high school. And then CTE students often have higher rates of employment in manual labor, and a lot of that is tied with just the historical implications that CTE was, as you know, originally developed to support students entering a vocational path. CTE helps develop critical thinking and collaboration skills that are valuable regardless of the post-secondary setting that a student is in. And then staffing implications. So it's important that the CTE offerings are aligned with industry demands, both at the community and the state level. And industry knowledge by CTE teachers is correlated with long-term earnings of students, which makes sense, right? We want students learning regardless of the subject from the best educators available to them. And in terms of CTE, those are going to be teachers who have expansive industry knowledge. And there is a need to staff a CTE program that offers a variety of course options as students have various post-secondary paths that they want to pursue. So what is evidence-based CTE according to recent literature? So it's important that CTE programming is accessible and it's available across a district, regardless of the school context or the school type. Public perception, again, we know the history of CTE, and so a lot of times it is still viewed as offerings best for students who are pursuing a vocational pathway. But CTE is valuable to students whether they are pursuing workplace directly out of high school or if they're pursuing workplace following additional post-secondary education. It's important to emphasize that you can pursue CTE and college prep, and in fact, CTE is complementary of college prep. And then it's important that students and families are aware that there are opportunities to earn both a high school diploma and industry credentials, both of which are valuable to students in their post-secondary pathways. And then community supported. Community supported CTE is aligned with local labor markets and high demand jobs to prepare students to meet the needs of their community. And then one of the ways that local industry partners can be advocates and partners with our schools is by furnishing equipment, internships, and potential employment pathways for CTE programs. So there's a variety of ways that community organizations and businesses and workforce can show up to support CTE in our schools. And then as far as CTE focused schools, they may serve one or more school districts, and they are sometimes called technical schools. And career academies are often have a cohort model, and they allow students to pursue different pathways while learning with their peers. And then career and technical student organizations are just extracurricular groups that can offer complementary experiences alongside of coursework. And let's talk about post-secondary readiness. Again, CTE is complementary of those who are going on to pursue additional education after graduating. And so partnerships with high schools and colleges and universities through CTE offerings such as dual enrollment can promote post-secondary readiness. CTE teachers can help make those connections for students between CTE pathways and post-secondary opportunities. For example, if you're interested in this career, here's what major you might be interested in. And then CTE helps students explore careers prior to selecting a major, which is really valuable for students. I was having a conversation with a young adult today of how at 18, you probably do need to explore a little bit of what options are available to you. And CTE is a great resource for doing that. And then work-based learning. So work-based learning is a very popular topic right now, and it can be a component of a comprehensive CTE program. And as you know, work-based learning can provide students with meaningful learning experiences where they're able to apply knowledge and skills that are being taught in the classrooms with real-life applications. And then CTE can lead to internships, which is I think the most well-known work-based learning offering, and this is facilitated through partnerships with local industries.
All right, and we want to provide just a little bit of policy foundation because I think this is going to be good context for the conversation that we're going to have with our CTE leaders and MERC divisions. So we're talking a little bit about federal, state, and school division level policies related to CTE. We get more in the weeds about this in the report. So if you love policy, dig into the report, but we're going to give just kind of a high level overview for this presentation. So in terms of federal policy, CTE is really focused on the Carl Perkins and Career and Technical Education Act. It's something it was passed a while ago, but it's been renewed in different iterations over time. There's state grants and funding that's related to this. Most recently in the fiscal year 24, whenever put this report together, that funding was allocated to state education agencies and then to local education agencies where they have jurisdiction over it. And it's $1.4 billion was allocated in the fiscal year 24. So local control is really key to the Perkins funding. So there's flexibility at the local level. So school divisions are able to set CTE priorities based on local workforce need. And I'll be curious to see how that comes up in some of our conversations today. There's also an equity focus related to Perkins funding. So state education agencies are expected to address access disparities for underrepresented groups. So taking a look at where there's CTE offerings and where there isn't CTE offerings and being able to make sure that we expand those to areas where there's not a lot of representation. And think back to the slide previously when we were talking about how performance in CTE is related to school demographic composition. This is related to the idea of Perkins funding and making sure that like schools with higher levels of concentrated poverty, for example, have the same kind of CTE opportunities available to their students. And then finally, at the federal level, there's the accountability piece. So there's required reporting that's attached to the funding about key indicators, things like employment post-secondary education. Again, these are things that are going to come up in conversation with our school division leaders today. When you look at the funding related to this, we break this down even further in the report to show how it splits off in the MERC region a little bit. But in terms of the Perkins funding per pupil back in the 2024-2025 academic year, in Virginia, it was around $21 per student. In the MERC region, on average, it was around $16 per student. So it was a little bit lower on average overall in the MERC region. But when we look at this at per pupil living in poverty, In the MERC region, there was actually a little bit higher funding than there was at the state level. So just to give a sense of how that funding typically gets distributed. There's several state policies that are related to career and technical education. I'm just going to give a really quick overview of these because they more or less provide some context or background for what division policy looks like for this. But there's seven that we talked about in the report. There's policy that relates to the distribution of Perkins funds to local education agencies and then annual reporting of CTE performance, program requirements for middle and high schools, awarding of verified credits and industry credentials, all of that's set at the state level. The Virginia Board of Education approves exams and credentials for CTE. That's in lieu of SOLs. There's a separate assessment portfolio that's associated with CTE. I remember when I was in North Carolina helping to facilitate some of those tests with our CTE department. Certification and requirements are for CTE teachers are set at the state level. That includes licensure, education, relevant industry experience. I know that's going to come up in our conversation about finding an educator workforce that has relative industry experience. But there's also Virginia Board of Education is able to issue provisional licensure for CTE teachers who have not yet received that industry credential. So a potential solution there or strategy there for navigating that challenge that we'll talk about today. There's also state policy that charges the Board of Workplace Development with assisting the governor in development and implementation of the Virginia plan, and that includes CTE funding and activities. There's state policy related to incorporating CTE in the College and Career Ready Virginia program, which a lot of that has to do with dual enrollment as well. And then there's also state policy related to innovative internship fund and programming. And Meleah alluded to this, that there's lots of conversation happening at the state level related to work-based learning and internships. You might have seen that there's a recent announcement about NVA, which is for internships in Virginia. There's also Virginia Talent Plus Opportunity Partnership. So there's a lot of state attention related to work-based learning and internships right now. So this is just a quick overview. Again, if you wanted to get any more kind of detail related to this, I would encourage you to take a look at the report. And we also provide relevant links in the report. And then in terms of local policy, just quickly, we looked at division strategic plans and school board policies for our 5 school divisions. And starting with school board policies, they typically reflect state law related to CTE. They often establish collaborations with local community colleges and industry partners. I'm excited to hear our division leaders talk about the kind of partnerships that they've established in their community and with local community colleges. There's some really innovative stuff happening in our region. They establish CTE class size limits to make sure that that's an appropriate level and workable level. And they also promote student organizations. So FBLA and Technology Student Association, those might be on the radar of folks on this call, but that's something a lot of times that's really articulated at the division policy level. And then for strategic plans, this is an interesting thing to dig into because school board policies are basically like what's written that schools are supposed to follow. Strategic plans are where a school division wants to go in the next 5 years, for example. So how is it that CTE is reflected in those strategic plans that are typically more forward-looking? Most MERC divisions identify CTE as a goal within their strategic plans. It's typically not one of the 5 pillars that you might see in a school division, but it's typically articulated as at least some sort of a goal within their strategic plans. And we'll learn a little bit more from our division leaders about what are some of the specific things they're hoping to accomplish on in the future of CTE in their divisions. It focuses on the development of the whole student and preparing for lifelong opportunities. It's identifying CTE as a key component of college and career readiness. And I put that in quotes because you see that come up a lot of times in policy language and a lot of times in the literature. That might be something that we might want to have some conversation about. What's the appropriateness of that language? Like, should we really be splitting these things apart if we're trying to conceptualize CTE as something that's supposed to be supportive of all your post-secondary planning? And then all MERC divisions include provisions for CTE advisory councils, so making sure that there's community input on CTE as well. And now we want to share our 5 key takeaways and recommendations, and Meleah is going to talk through those.
Thank you. So based on the literature, data, and policies, here were the key takeaways and recommendations. So the first is to maximize post-secondary and career benefits of CTE, highlighting that there are various CTE pathways, course offerings, and industry partnerships, and that having those within a division can be adapted to align with each individual student's professed post-secondary plans. The second key takeaway and recommendation is leveraging the benefits of CTE for students with disabilities. It's important that divisions keep it top of the mind that there's value for all students, but certainly the data shows for students with disabilities. So ensuring that students with disabilities have access to CTE courses that can help assist them in their efforts beyond high school graduation. Third, leaning into those connections between CTE and work-based learning with industry partners. We've talked a lot about the need for the industry needs to align with what's being provided to students in school. So a robust CTE program should be community supported, and it should align with the needs of the local labor markets. And that can include internships, job shadowing, and other work-based learning opportunities for students. Fourth, promoting the public perception of CTE and emphasizing the variety and broad benefit, making sure that we're communicating that all students can benefit from CTE in some way. So again, working against those negative public perceptions. And then finally, disrupt tracking practices that discourage participation in CTE. So that includes recognizing and rewarding the rigor in the program and emphasizing the way that CTE is valuable in college readiness in addition to career readiness.
All right, so that's an overview of what we learned in the report. Again, I would encourage you to take a look at it in case you wanted to dig more into the research data or the policy components of this. We, as a research team, learned a lot about this, but the expertise is really in these school division CTE leaders. So I'm really excited to give them the floor to share about what are some of the current priorities related to CTE and what are some of the challenges and opportunities that they see coming up. So we have representatives from all 5 of our school divisions, and they're all going to talk through these points. And we're going to start off with Chad in Chesterfield. So Chad, take it away.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate this opportunity to share. So in Chesterfield County Public Schools, again, my name is Chad Maclin. I'm the CT director here. We're a large school division, about 60, a little more than 65,000 students, and excited to share that we have about 28,000 students in our CT programs in grades 5 through 12, which is a great representation. We have 4 main pillars in CTE that we hold true to. And the first is high quality instruction, followed up and supported by 3 other elements: career and technical student organization participation, career credentialing, and work-based learning. Those are what our magic sauce is made of. When we look at our priorities in programming, we focus in kind of 3 areas, and you'll see my next slide is also going to have these same headings. Before we go there, we do focus, it all starts with instruction. So how do we attract and retain high quality teachers, because they're the rubber that meets the road for making CTE courses come to life for our students. And so that's a priority for us, as well as ensuring that there's awareness and access to our programs. Our communities are aware, our parents are aware, our advisory committees do a great job in that. But all of this helps students to identify that we have students that want a career. We're not looking to fill jobs, we're looking to fill lifelong careers for individuals. And what's important to that, make our classrooms come alive for students, is that they mimic business and industry. With some classrooms, it's really hard to stay current. EV technologies in vehicles is difficult to stay current with to make sure we're up to date. So too is advanced manufacturing and computers for coding. But these are the priorities that drive our daily work. Likewise, these are also our challenges and opportunities. So, David, that'd be our next slide there, where we look in the same lane, these 3 same categories, but how are we working with our community to ensure that our instructors are of high quality and are from business and industry and have the latest talents and skills that necessary to convey to our students? We're looking to partner with businesses and industry to help ensure that employers can have a stake in our employees as we bring teachers on. I'm not going to find on my own engineers in the energy sector. I need my energy sector businesses to help support. How do we bring that to life? And that's a first pathway in for students making connections to industry. Likewise, with increasing access awareness, ensuring that parents understand current education is the path towards higher education and continuing education. I don't say college and career. I say education and training through all levels. I say career through all levels of education and training. If you want to be what courses do you need to take to earn that? be it a doctor, be it a lawyer, be it a hairdresser, be it an engineer. How do we help students connect to that? And then lastly, back to our classrooms that mimic business and industry, ensuring that we have the most aligned technology so that students aren't seeing technology for the first time in the field. They've had an opportunity in a safe, structured environment in our schools to be able to work with, touch, and become familiar so that by the time they are seeing that equipment in the field, they have had an experience with it and are comfortable with it. So those are our challenges and our opportunities matched with our priorities of programming, but understanding the most important thing we can do is to help kids can make connection to their career futures. And that's what we're trying to do in Chesterfield County Public Schools.
Thanks, Chad. For some reason, PowerPoint just quit on my computer, so I'm going to try to pull this back up again. So give me just a second. Sorry about that.
That's that
There
little
we go.
X in the upper right corner there, David.
Good timing. All right, here we go. We got it back up. All right. All right. So, Bruce, do you want to tell us about what's happening in Goochland?
Yeah, thank you, David, and appreciate being included today. I'm the director of CTE here in Goochland. I've been here for about 14 years. We are the smallest of the 5 divisions online today. At our middle school, we have about 620 students. At the high school, we have about 850 students. But within those 2 schools, we have a very large buffet of CTE offerings for all of our students. 95% of our graduates take at least one CTE course, and most of them take more than one CTE course. And that leads to many completers in a school division. Some of our priorities that we have coming up to work on right now, we are establishing a new academy for robotics, mechatronics, and logistics, given the new industry that's coming to Goochland. We have an Amazon distribution plant should be open the end of this year. So that's going to provide about 1,700 jobs. Eli Lilly is coming to Goochland, and that will provide about 1,000 jobs. And those are just the full-time jobs there. That's not counting the construction jobs that will be coming to our students in this community over the next 5, 6 years during the building of these facilities. So we're planning ahead for our students to be ready for careers in all of these new industries coming to Goochland and the Central Virginia area, because we're not going to limit ourselves just to Goochland, even though this community is growing rapidly. We also are going to start with planning for our new CT addition to the high school. We're planning approximately a 30,000 square foot addition that will accommodate some of the new programs that we are planning for, and also moving some of our existing programs out of the old facility that we have now. And then we're expanding our work-based learning program. We've got a very robust program now, thanks to our work-based learning coordinator, Miss EYP, we call her. She does a fabulous job in connecting our students with our business partners. We have over 200 business partners that we can call on to help out to provide our students with job shadows, internships, and apprenticeships, whatever fits their needs. So we're very fortunate to have good leadership in our work-based learning program and lots of business partners to help out with that. So we are very blessed with those 2 pieces. The challenges that we have, and you're going to hear some redundancy throughout these 5 presentations, I think. Finding highly qualified CTE teachers is a real challenge for all of us in all 131 school divisions, probably. So that's going to continue to be a problem, and we're going to have to be very creative in how we fill those positions so that we provide our students with the best possible instruction in all of the areas that are coming to Goochland and the Central Virginia area. Funding for high-tech equipment, and Chad touched on this. We try to replicate as closely as possible what students are going to see in industry in our labs, and that requires the use of Perkins funds and grants to install this equipment in our labs. So we want our students to have this hands-on experience with as much high-tech equipment as we possibly can in our labs here in the schools. We're going to expand the marketing of our CTE courses here so that we expose more students to all of our CTE programs and career pathways. We increase the efforts, and we're changing the mindsets of our parents and students, and not every child has to go to college. And that is shown in the percentage of students that is growing every year in Goochland that are going directly into the workforce or into the military. Every year, that percentage has grown. So that speaks highly to what CTE in Goochland is doing for our students and training them for careers and life after high school. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view of what we're doing here in Goochland, David.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Justin, you want to talk about what's happening in Hanover?
Absolutely. Thanks, David. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Justin Roerink. I serve as principal of the Hanover Center for Trades and Technology and also coordinator of career and technical education and workforce development in Hanover County Public Schools. Excited to have the chance to speak with you all this afternoon. Hanover County serves approximately 17,000 students from pre-K through 12th grade. And with that, we're near around this year about 5,700 students in CT programming in middle and high school. We offer robust CT programming that we're certainly excited about, and one of our key priorities does revolve about expansion of our trade school, the Hanover Center for Trades and Technology. We're currently right now in works with architecture engineering firm towards the planning stages for the expansion of the school. And as part of this expansion and work on both the engineering firm and certainly with our stakeholders, we are looking to add some new programming to our school. A couple new areas have been identified through certainly work with key stakeholders and regional data as well as student interest are looking to try to add a diesel equipment technology program as well as a new welding program. These are two areas that we want to just, again, expand opportunities for students in areas that we don't currently offer. In addition, focus is always on trying to develop new partnerships, both locally and regionally. You've heard that certainly from Bruce as well, that one of the benefits of being in this region is that many of our employers work with all of us. And so that's what we try and partner together. And none of us are able to provide all the students, new employees that they need, especially in our in-demand areas. But we certainly know that in order to expand the amount of students able to partake in our work-based learning opportunities, that takes each day, each year, expanding our relationships with those organizations so that we can get them out there. And a key focus for us is getting them out in the field, whether it be in job shadowing experiences, internships, and apprenticeships, because once they see what it's really like in the industry, that is a critical element to help them make that transition, after high school and even after college as well. In terms of additional focus areas, we are in the process of reviewing our current IT pathways for updates, and whether it be looking at new offerings that we don't currently have in our division for students, as well as looking at our naming conventions. Certainly this field is rapidly changing, and there might be new jobs that, new titles. And so trying to make sure that the courses that we have are aligning to the actual job fields and are easier for students to see that direct correlation between what they're learning and then those job openings. We're also, as you've heard from multiple people, trying to explore new methods for finding and retaining our highly qualified CT teachers. And it is both elements to that, because number one, it is difficult to find them, but then once you do have them, it's really difficult to retain them, because especially if they're teaching in a high demand field, they're getting contacted by people in the industry that are reaching back out to want to pay them a substantially higher salary to get them back out in the field. And I drive down the interstate here in Richmond all the time and look at the Maclin Sons ad saying $10,000 signing bonus to join them. And certainly that's not something that we are able to do. But going back to, you heard what Chad said earlier, is again, trying to explore what are different ways we can work with our business partners to try and help support us in supplying that teacher, especially in those emerging fields as well, where due to pay and even how new that area is, it's going to be extremely difficult to find somebody, to get in to teach those areas. Next, we are, similar to other people said, exploring additional ways to fund, updating our equipment ensuring that it's aligned with what the industry is currently using, whether it be something that's new or even replacing something that is needing to be updated because it's been there for a long time. And so those are expensive to add, and so certainly utilizing our partnerships to help support us with that. And then the final area in terms of priorities and programming is we're trying to review and explore always our industry credential offerings. The state is currently, number one, reviewing the list that are acceptable offerings. But we also, as part of this, we do this annually to try and ensure that what we're offering for students aligns to what the industry says are beneficial and help make them more marketable as they depart our programs. In terms of challenges, we already talked about this earlier, but certainly that finding and retaining. So while it is certainly a priority that we're trying to be proactive with, it is something that is a significant challenge you've heard from everybody. And then in addition to that, you heard earlier from David in regards to different legislation and ways that VDOE looks at trying to work with our teachers on licensure, but meeting the VDOE licensure expectations for our career switchers is also a continuing challenge. And so that's always something that we try to work with our state partners that, can there be opportunities for refinement based on certain measures that may have in place that we feel could be updated to allow for us to bring more teachers in so that we can, instruct our students accordingly. Another area is always, again, the availability and access to industry-based work-based learning experiences, different insurance regulations from different partners sometimes can get in the way of trying to get students in at younger ages, and as well as consistent availability. You might have certain businesses that are able to take certain people, 1 year, and then they're not able to the next year. And so trying to help ensure we have that consistent access and expand the number of students that can be able to, take advantage of those opportunities. And then finally, going back to some talk earlier in terms of proactive we're trying to go with, but the cost to maintain and upgrade our CT equipment and staying relevant is certainly substantial. So that is always a challenge that, we have to continue to attack and work with our industry professionals as well as state grants and other different grant opportunities when they come up so that we can meet that.
Thanks, Justin. All right. Mac, who's been doing this for 40 years, do you want to share about what's going on in Henrico?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mac Beaton. I'm the Director of Workforce and Career Development in Henrico. Just so a little background about Henrico, we're roughly 50,000 students. Some information you might not know about Henrico, we have 139 different languages spoken in our schools. So we're very diverse and about 40% economically disadvantaged, which offers some unique opportunities. And you're going to hear me use the word a lot, opportunities versus challenges, because it's important. So when we start looking at what are our current priorities in programming, I'm going to start with equitable access to high quality work-based learning experiences and industry certifications. And this kind of ties in it a little bit in the same way, but different. When I think about this, it's really about how do all students both ends of the spectrum and in the middle have opportunities to experience work-based learning experiences and earn an industry certifications, because the models that we've created in education as a whole has made it difficult for some students to have this, whether it's SOL testing, whether it's the weighted credits, or all these pieces, which sometimes we limit those opportunities for our students. So it's important to open the door so all students can have these opportunities. And when you think about industry certifications, if the student is our product, when that product leaves, that industry certification tells the employer the ability of that student has been measured in a way that makes sense to the employer. Where, just saying you earned an A in a class doesn't really give you that piece of the puzzle. So we want all of our students who are CTE completers to sit and earn an industry certification. And that's a standard that we set. And as we move forward, what is this for our stakeholders? We started back actually in 2018, trying to rewrite the narrative about college and career ready. And I'm glad you mentioned that, David, because that's one thing that's always bugged me, because historically what that really meant was college or career ready. just by the nature of this, we started trying to get students to focus on their why. We wanted them to graduate enrolled, enlisted, and we do a little bit different in Henrico. We add the and or employee because you can do multiple ones of these at a time. So really helping students start to think about what's their why. And that opened the door for our stakeholders to get involved with us through things like our Life Ready Expo, where employers come in and really talk to students and parents about career options through their company's lens, which then leads to our career rodeo, where our students are actually showing their skills to the employers as we move into the signing day. We do a lot of middle school visits. We even push down to the elementary school students. And we actually, even several years ago, changed the name of our technical centers to Advanced Career Education Centers to try to rewrite that narrative about this is more than just that. For pushing down to the elementary school, we started out years ago. We had the red bus, which was Careers on Wheels. We've updated that now to the Mobile Access to Careers. Our staff came up with the acronym there, MAC. I don't know where they got that from, but it's a great way to take the information down to elementary school students, because students can only be it if they can see it. And we need to get it in front of them and help them start to think about careers very early on, which you'll hear that come up later on as I'm talking. And then, as always, we all have pointed out, we're trying to figure out how to get that high quality, experienced teacher into the classroom. Henrico County several years ago started what they call a career ladder. So we recognize the skill sets that teachers bring to the table that may not be your typical teacher skill set. So in our case, it works out extremely well because the high quality technician would not get credit for those skill sets in education, but through the career ladder, we're able to reward that teacher for the hard work that they've done to earn these and keep these certifications up to date. And as we move forward, when we start looking at our challenges and opportunities, as I said earlier, opportunities is where I like to go. How do we increase that pipeline? One of the opportunities that we have is the teacher licensure, and I think Justin mentioned that. You've got to think some of our programs have multiple industry licensing agencies that have to approve a teacher. For instance, in nursing, the Board of Nursing has to say this teacher could teach nursing, then VDOE has to approve the nursing, the teacher themselves. So that poses some challenge and some time lapse. So if you're looking for a job, you apply for the job, you interview for the job, we want to offer you the job, then we have to wait for all these groups to sign off on saying, yes, you're able to teach this job. So that time differentiation from start to finish, we lose people at times. The other thing to think about is the lack of PD opportunities for CTE teachers who are technically career switchers. Most public schools have staff development to help teachers learn their student management system or the different rules. But when you're coming straight out of industry, you've never made a test for a student. You don't know how. So we really have tried, we need to look at the opportunity to do a better job for professional learning opportunities for these career switchers. They know the content. What they're missing is the things that the teachers normally get when they're student teaching or in a college prep program. And there's also a problem that we're running into, especially like in technology ed and there's no 4-year programs in the state of Virginia that serve preparing students to become CTE teachers. We're having to go out of state to find these teachers, which for all of us makes an issue because we're all competing for the same people across the boards. And obviously the pay disparities from someone who's in the industry to a teacher's salary. One thing that you can't offer in a public school is overtime pay. If you're an HVAC technician, like Chad pointed out, not only the signing bonus, we might be able to match their pay, but then they can double their pay by working overtime. Or if you're an auto mechanic, you're getting paid by the job. So you can sometimes work 80 hours in a 40-hour week. So it's hard for us to figure out how to do that, but things like the Career Ladder are very helpful in doing that. Some of the policies that are implemented, and we all know about unfunded mandates, but that causes some issues in school systems, but also the timing of these policies. We can't shift gears overnight. I think Justin was mentioned about the industry certifications. When a student gets into a track and we're preparing students for that industry certification, and then 6 months into it, we find out that industry certification is changing to something else, it makes it hard for us to ensure student success. So one thing that I think we've got to really look at is as the policies change, how does that disrupt the planning of our programs and the courses that we're offering, as well as what the student outcomes will be? And there's got to be some time to adjust in that. And I think Bruce mentioned, as well as Chad, is shifting that mindset of parents, counselors, and all the stakeholders towards understanding career pathway. How is a student coming into the schoolway, what does success look like? Historically, success was the student in elementary school went to middle school, student in middle school went to high school, student in high school went to a four-year college. That defines success. But that does not necessarily find success in today's world. As far as the infrastructures, we've all mentioned about the funding of new equipment, as well as the funding streams to help push this down to the elementary school. There's research out there that shows by age 9, we tell a student what they can't be just because they're not exposed to it. So having students exposed to these opportunities that are available in high school and after, it's important to get that down at the elementary school level. And the funds for the new equipment, think about this. When a student is in a CTE program in high school, when they're entering industry, they are going to be 5 years probably out from using some of this equipment. So if we're teaching on equipment that's already out of date, it's going to be so far out of date by the time the student starts working. I like to use this example. I used to teach electronics. I taught if VCR repair was big business. If that's what students were learning today, how many of those students would be employable? So finding the funds to help make sure our equipment is up to date and maintained well, and that it's not just the lab that we used to know. It's a constantly growing, evolving, changing. When you look at the rate of technology that's changing, we have to change just as fast. We need to make sure that every student leaves with an understanding of what they want to do. Every parent out there wants their child to be successful, wants them to be life ready. We have to empower that student to understand enrolled, enlisted, employed, how they work together. Sometimes we think that you just go to college and then I'll figure out my career, but you need to go to college with understanding what I'm doing it for, the why of this, and having that high quality work-based learning experience. I use this example all the time. A lot of students want to take care of that science program until they find out you got to do what? And so if that student had gone all the way through college to become a vet, and then they find out you've got to do what, now they've actually wasted time that they could move forward. Okay, David. Administrators typically are not, they're struggling. How do you understand how to help a CTE teacher? Most administrators have come through a traditional education background, and we need to help them understand that the classroom for the CTE student looks completely different. I don't know if you can see the background image of this picture, but this is actually one of our classrooms. This is a upstairs of one of our schools that was raw space. There are construction trade students who are actually building it out. as an administrator, this is kind of a scary thought to put students in this environment and see learning take place. But it really does work. So we've got to reimagine what that classroom looks like, what the lab looks like. It's not inside the four walls. It's how can we bring the outside world to our students. And we've got to continue to grow and expand our programming because technology is changing so fast. There are some generic skills that will carry through, but if we're not growing and changing our programs, and I think you've heard from every director that we're constantly adding new programs and new opportunities for our students, and that's changing what we teach. But as you change what we teach, we also have to retool the lab, retool the teachers, and retrain our students at the same time. So that means the other part that we've always heard from employers, the one skill that no matter what job you go into are the soft skills that have to be there. And it's very important that we equip these students with the experience, the confidence, and the skill set so that they can go forth in their career pathway and be successful.
Thanks, Matt. And then Courtney, if you could share what's going on with RPS and CT and how it plugs into the Passion for Learning initiative in RPS.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I will share, I'm going last out of all the school divisions, so some of this will sound like what you've heard from the other folks. I'm Courtney Ward. I'm the Director of Secondary Success Pathways for RPS. My department oversees anything related to graduation efforts and post-secondary success for students, including alternative ed, college and career pathways, and CTE. RPS has approximately 22,000 students, and about half of those students are secondary students in middle or high school. Our CTE model is strong and growing in Richmond Public Schools. A big push for us right now and last school year was really building out our structures for the 3E model and the new accountability structure from BDOE, particularly the employment piece. We actually find that many of our students have solid pathways to college, whether it's 4-year or 2-year, or even trade and vocational schools. And if they wish to go into the military, they have the means to get there. Where they struggle is finding employment that we would call life enriching. And so employment that would be leading towards a career, not just a job, something that could help them sustain themselves now and then themselves and their families in the future. So we focused intently on industry credentials. I'm really proud of the work that our division made last school year with 3E. Over 90% of our class of 2025 graduates were CTE completers, which means they did the CTE sequential electives, those two, and they earned an industry credential. In Richmond, Virginia, we talk a lot about the workforce gap. There's a lot of jobs out there without a lot of qualified folks to fill them, especially in our local area in Richmond. And so we've been looking intently at the priorities in the areas of construction, healthcare, IT, and advanced manufacturing in partnership with the Chamber, with Chamber RVA and other organizations. Ultimately, RPS should be able to provide as many employees for the open positions within our city. Another thing that has been super exciting on our front has been the expansion of the GoTech labs in our middle schools. We have 3 labs that open this year and 3 more that will open next year. And GoTech stands for the Great Opportunities in Technology and Engineering Careers, which really provides students with a way to simulate and practice on smaller simulated machines, what they would do in the actual workplace or in the lab setting. So for example, a simulated crane in the middle school or a 3D printer in the middle school versus an actual crane in the field or an actual plotter or larger 3D printer at high school and in the field. And lastly, our current priority is really looking at work-based learning. We, as everyone has said, we know that that is a clear pipeline to employment. I would say like 2 years ago, our work-based learning kind of lived in a vacuum. It was something we were doing to check a box. now I believe our work-based learning is really laying the foundation for what students do in that apprenticeship or that internship and how it will translate to actual employment and a job, and letting the work-based learning open the door to students getting out there, being visible to employers, showing the skills that they have, then also getting the wealth of information from those businesses and employers on how they can hone their skills so that they are actually more employable. Same as Mac, like instead of talking about challenges, I'm going to talk about this as opportunities. And the greatest opportunity we have to do all of this work in RPS is our Passion for Learning initiative. We have a strategic plan at RPS called Dreams for RPS. And one of the main goals is the high school redesign. We are looking to redesign all of our high schools so that they are thematic, and the signature themes will focus on these big picture umbrella topics: care, connect, create, express, innovate, and lead. Yeah, as you all know, there's lots of magnet schools or thematic schools across the Richmond area. In Richmond, we are unique because many of ours will be CTE focused. Ideally to make learning more relevant and personalized for students, but also to be a means to an end to getting more of our students with the skills they need if they wish to be employed. The big opportunity we have here is just bringing in as many partners, business partners, college and educational partners to help drive forth that work for students as well as our staff. We have a technical center right now that was built in the 1960s, and it's old. It's a wonderful place, but we know that we will drive more enrollment, interest, and honestly, production from our students if they are in a facility that is new and innovative and honestly shiny. You know, kids would love to learn somewhere that looks and feels good. And so a part of our high school redesign process will be the build out of a new technical center at the Maury Street location in the old Altria building. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Courtney. It's great to hear the priorities and the challenges and opportunities in each of our divisions. And what we're going to do now is we have some questions that we've prepared based off of what we learned in the research, but also understanding what is kind of top of mind for our school divisions right now that we're going to pose to the CTE division leaders for each of the MERC divisions. And then we want to save a little bit of time at the end for questions from the audience as well. And I'm going to throw it over to Meleah to pose these questions to our esteemed.
Thank you so much. So our first question, I'm going to direct at Mac. What kinds of supports, trainings, or resources have been most effective or are most needed to ensure that schools can help students with varying strengths, ability levels, and needs so that they can fully benefit from participation in CTE programs?
You know, that is a very interesting question, and I'm going to answer it with a simple word. One of the most important resources that can be given to us to help kids is people's times from the business industry. When you look at the rate that technology is changing and the way that industry does things, having the opportunity for business partners to come in and not just observe or hire our students, but come in and work with our students, show them the skill sets that they're going to need, and make the opportunities after high school, help them see what those can be. And so that support, those resources are really coming from the investment from our business partners back into the students themselves. When I say that's an investment, because they are having to give up productivity time. So you're giving up something today to get twice as much tomorrow. When you look at how you train students, you know, the students don't sign up to take CTE courses to sit in a classroom. They sign up to do things with their hands. One of the most interesting ways to look at how we teach is the right answer is not what we're really looking for. It's the process to get to the right answer. And our teachers do an excellent job across the board of helping students problem solve, and getting the wrong answer is a good thing because they go back and redesign, regroup, rethink, and come up with the right answer by working through the problems. And that's real world. We've created classrooms that are not your traditional classrooms. I'm sure we renovated 48,000 square foot of Regency Mall. And let me tell you, when that first came onto the table, a lot of people said, you're going to have students do what? But when you take a busload of students, take them to the mall, open the door, the kids come out and immediately go to work, because for them, it's not school, it's an interview, because their business partners are right there with us, watching the students and being involved and teaching the students the new and innovative ways of doing things. That's a powerful statement. So it all comes together when you see the students at the career rodeo. And that's when you talk about students with varying strengths. For these kids to be successful, they have to go through an interview to get a job. And if you've ever sat through an interview where you've got a suit on and tie, and you're sitting there on the other side of a table and you get asked these questions, but to be able to have that interview where you're demonstrating the skill set that you're comfortable with, and it's an immediate conversation starter for the employer. It's extremely successful. We just had a career rodeo and almost 700 students were demonstrating their skills to 400 employers looking to hire them. So it's about looking at education differently, looking at the problem differently, and not expecting to get a wrong answer, but being willing to regroup, rethink, and move forward.
Thank you so much. Next, Courtney, how can direct partnerships with local industry support the CTE efforts of schools in the Richmond area, including staffing?
Yeah, definitely. One of the main things we are looking at with Passion for Learning is who's going to do the work, who's going to create the passion in the classrooms. Ultimately, we want to have folks that are in the industry ready to join our efforts in RPS. Mac's already spoken to a lot of the challenges with that related to salary and onboarding to education. But two big goals out of staffing that would help our effort with Passion for Learning and CTE is, one, for the business community to lean in on what the current workforce needs are, what the specific skills are. There is a gap between what's available in some of our curriculum models, what's available in some of our old ways of teaching, and what is needed in the industry to be cutting edge or to match the need of customers, basically, in the labor market. And so just to have insight from that end from our industry partners, it would be key so that we're preparing kids to immediately go out and use their high value skills and credentials to be employed. And then number two, it would be wonderful if some of those folks could join our staff. We've talked a lot about sharing staff between a business and a school division. And would it be possible for the business to have part of their business in our school? And so customers are coming to our Maury Street location to get their car serviced or to have their animal looked at in our vet science program. And those employees are working with our students and our teachers, or even serving as the teacher to one, facilitate the work, two, to show the excellent and exemplar models that are needed for students, and then three, to fill that key vacancy issue that we have with so many CTE areas. And then lastly, I'll just say, making sure that our work is experiential, rigorous, collaborative, all of those key terms. We can't do it alone. Unlike the other contents, English, math, history, this field is always changing. It's always cutting edge. And so if we don't have folks that are the experts in the business at the table with us as educators, we're going to miss key information. We're going to miss the boat when it comes to what students need. And so really just sitting hand in hand, side by side with our business partners to build out excellent programs for our students in our new Passion for Learning model.
Thank you so much. Bruce, we're going to go to you next. How have you worked to align student interests with workforce demands in your community through CTE?
Thank you. We, as most divisions probably do, we do a student survey, and we want to find out what their interests are, and so we can align those student interests with the needs of business and industry. We also work with the students starting in grade 7 with their academic and career plan, finding out what they would like to do once they graduate so that we can direct them into the proper CTE pathways to help them be successful after they graduate. We also work with our business community to align the student industries with the industry demands through our CTE advisory committee, through what we call our business and education roundtable that we bring our business leaders into. And then all of our divisions have to complete a completer survey of our graduates, and we use that information from our recent graduates to talk to us about what was successful, what they liked about the programs, what they would like to see us do more in our CTE programs that would help students that follow them through the school system. And we also look at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics in the occupational outlook handbook there to help us align programs as we look 5, 10 years down into the future, adding new programs in computer science, cybersecurity, logistics, and so on. So a lot of that comes together to help us make sure that we are offering the proper programs in our schools that align with the student interests and also align with what the business and industry is looking to hire, what they're looking to hire as far as workers in their particular industries. So I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. Justin, how have you modernized the narrative related to CTE and the opportunities it offers for students in your division?
Thank you. A big thing is, and this kind of goes back to some of the earlier conversations in the introductory presentation, is to make sure that we're consistently promoting that CTE is for all students. Every student coming into school, or they're going to leave and at some point go into their career. And so every single student needs the skills that all of our CTE programs provide. And in addition, we ensure their academic and career planning process helps make students aware of the CT course alignment to their career interest and related post-secondary education opportunities. We also are really trying to make sure that students are aware, even at an early age, about career opportunities and then what programming we offer in our division related to those. So even as early as 5th grade, we do tours in our county. We invite every single 5th grader countywide attends both the Hanover Center for Trades and Technology to learn about each of our programs here at the school, as well as next door at our Health Sciences Specialty Center to learn about all the programming there. They visit both at one day. And so early on, they're being exposed to what types of careers that exist out in the industry, what core programming we have as they proceed through their career in Hanover County schools. We also participate, and so do all those on the call here, in the regional Mission Tomorrow event, where every 8th grader gets to attend the Richmond Raceway to learn about careers and different companies in every single career pathway. So it's a wonderful opportunity for those students to be exposed to these different career opportunities, as well as different education they might need to get to those opportunities. Our school division does also hold an annual Education Expo countywide event that exposes students to a list of different offerings, both in our school division related to different areas such as the Trade School Health Science Special Center, as well as different regional programs such as Code RVA. And then programming at each of our high schools in career and technical education are also promoted and exposed to our students as well. We also try to make sure that we're highlighting all different kind of pathways and different career opportunities within each of these programs. So, when you're looking at, for instance, in agriculture, we have turf grass programs and the different pathways you can go to get additional training through even like Virginia Tech, for instance, and other programs and move on to your career there. As well as in carpentry. Certainly, there's all different fields they can align with, both directly into industry and continuing apprenticeship training, as well as we've had students go to construction management degree program through Virginia Tech. So trying to make sure they're aware of what are the different careers that relate to these programs, and what type of post-secondary training is relevant depending on what you want to go into. And it is a continuous process of making sure that we're telling our story and noting the different student successes and benefits for students regardless of what your path is going to be, because our goal is to make sure that every student gets the correct training they need to enter the career related to their interest and abilities. And we have an array of programming in our schools, and a majority of our kids, even in CTE, kind of like the data shows, are going to college. So it's not that it's CTE is for students don't go to college. It's for all students, and it's our job to make sure that we're ensuring students are aware of those different paths, the great program that prepares them for the paths, and then what those post-secondary educational opportunities may be depending on what they're wanting to go into.
Thank you so much. And then last but certainly not least, Chad, what opportunities exist at the local level for divisions to lead the next wave of CTE innovation and policy development?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And I think I'm going to take a big swat at this from the policy side. Everybody on this call and many other CTE professionals across Virginia are a member of their professional organization, Virginia ACTE or ACT at the national level, or their program level professional organization. There's a lot of work that can be done around ensuring the guardrails are up, but they're also minded well and well crafted from a policy standpoint. This year alone, we're monitoring 8 bills, House or Senate side, that affect CTE. Everything from career coaches to work-based learning pilots for staff to salary credit for industry coming into teaching, as well as I just saw favorable credit for retirement credit and VRS for certain CTE teachers and the like, as well as exemptions around 16 years of old and apprenticeship programs, and then budget amendments around increasing funding for career technical student organization, management, and leadership in the Commonwealth. But what's really important, and neither Virginia ACT or any of the divisions, they're not advocates for a political party other than advocates for policy that helps make CTE more accessible for students, more accessible for employers, and more accessible for people that want to become teachers in CTE. And so helping policymakers understand when they write, what the impact will be, to nudge policymakers around a policy that helps increase access and awareness to the CT program. So we always want to encourage everybody who's out there. There's all sorts of delegates and senators and representatives that when they hear the story about curriculum education and the impact it makes on workforce, the impact it makes on education, the impact it makes on our economy, the return on investment. CTE is a good bet. We return students to industry faster and more prepared than most. We validate those through industry credentials. We validate those through career and technical student organization competition, where students compete and demonstrate their knowledge and expertise in a peer-to-peer setting. So ensuring that we have good policy around CTE, ensuring that students have access, safe access, and work-based learning experiences is important for all of us. Ensuring that we have pipelines where industry professionals can become CT teachers is important for all of us. And just making sure that school board policies, accreditation policies, support access, equitable awareness for everyone to find their career path, to explore what is theirs. Mac mentioned you can't be what you can't see earlier. That helps us with our academic and career planning that I know that Bruce mentioned, and we're all heavily involved with academic and career planning with students in elementary school all the way through. How do we give students resilient skills to career shift? How do we give students valuable experiences to try it on and say, this isn't for me, but this is for me, while we're here to support them. So policy at the local level makes a difference, ensuring that kids have access to courses across the Commonwealth, access to work-based learning opportunities, industry credentials is important at the local level, as well as the state and the national level. We're certainly watching what's happening there at the national level. We're all aware that a continuing resolution has been passed that level funds. Well, level fund in CTE isn't a great thing. Level fund just marks us behind innovation and technology because level funding says we can continue to do what we've done. It doesn't provide us opportunity to expand what we should be doing and where we're going. So wherever we can advocate for more dollars federally, for more dollars in the Commonwealth of Virginia, those are two important arguments so that we can bring greater access for our students, greater experience for our students, and all of us are doing great things to make connections for students as they build their career future. We're all meeting students where they are. We're all taking them to the next level, providing opportunities for them. And that's a great thing about education. I like to say that the core are the requisite skills that students apply to their passion, which is CTE. Every student needs to understand literacy and numeracy. How does it apply to the craft of nursing, to the craft of auto repair, to the craft of construction? That's what we're doing, helping students make connections to their career futures. Policies are the cornerstone of that and the establishment. And I appreciate the question to highlight how the General Assembly plays a critical role in ensuring successful CTE programs in Virginia.
Thanks, Chad. And we have a few minutes left for questions from the audience. So we have about 5 minutes. If you want to either raise your hand or throw a question in the chat for our awesome panel here, would encourage you to do so. I would love to know everyone's thoughts on AI and CTE, both in terms of how it's going to potentially impact the careers that you're preparing students for, and if you're seeing it in like getting incorporated into some of the pathways, some of the clusters. How is AI showing up in your work?
David, I'll take a stab at that. Chesterfield, we're very fortunate. We're planning a generative AI student fair this spring that'll be open to everyone in our region to participate. We've got teachers participating at EdTech RVA here in March, and then we're hoping to have a generative AI summit this September 26th. So shameless plug here for that, where we're going to have business and industry represented. We've got Google on the dock, and they're going to be presenting. So business industry is going to come and bring their generative AI to our workforce in Central Virginia, which will be a great showcase. We have our teachers and students showcasing their wares. So that's a shameless plug for what we're doing to help expand student, teacher, and business involvement with generative AI in Chesterfield, but open to the region. But also from a course standpoint, I think we're all pivoting as fast as we can and trying to find that sweet spot for where it lands. But I know we've got students' interest in computer science and programming like we've never had before.
Thanks, Chad. And I see we have a question from Carmen in the chat. How are you implementing flexible seat time to provide work-based learning experiences?
I'll jump in on that one. I think in all of our classes, all of our CTE classes, you have required competencies, and then you have some opportunity to build on that. I think what really has to happen for that flexible seat time is figure out how to make sure we can cover those essential competencies and have the students able to meet that 80% of those essential competencies, and then work with the business and industry partners to say, we've got these pieces of the puzzle left over. How can you help? So it's not so much flexible seat time, but it's how to use what the business and industry partners can bring to the table and allow our students to go and learn at their location, as well as just cover it at airspace.
I think that's a great point. I'll add on to Mac on that. We're actually meeting next Wednesday with an advisory committee we have here and Virginia Works for this very topic to figure out how do we send 40 students out on registered youth apprentices next year. while meeting the related technical instruction. And that's going to be a shared responsibility with our employers, a good conversation about our curriculum, what we're teaching, what they're going to be experiencing, and how do we mesh those two. So I'm excited for this opportunity to connect with employers to say, how do we collectively come together and both of us share this opportunity for student continuing learning around that, but using the flexible seat time to allow students to have experiences in the field away from our class, I think is a cornerstone in making that connection. So connecting with employers and making them part of that conversation and the related technical instruction is going to be important also.
All right, folks. It's 4:59, and we have a couple of questions in the chat that we probably won't be able to get to, unfortunately. But we'll could everybody please join me in applauding, however you feel like applauding on Zoom for Chad, Bruce, Justin, Matt, Courtney, and Meleah for sharing about this today. What a great conversation. Again, I would encourage you to take a look at the report. Everybody's contact information is provided in that resource document, so please follow up with any of us if you have any thoughts or questions about this. I'm going to be sending a message to you tomorrow morning that encourages you to complete a very brief survey about your experiences. And if you need a certificate for professional learning credit, it'll be attached at the end of that. But regardless of if you need the certificate, would encourage you to provide feedback. So thanks to everybody who was on this panel. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. And we'll look forward to staying in touch. Thanks, y'all.